Hey there, Debbie Heiser here. I'm excited today because let me tell you something. You cannot build a lit up business on a life full of leaking energy. Today, I am handing you the exact set of agreements I try to live inside of, the ones that keep my relationships clean, my leadership solid, and my business decisions fast and clear. It's not a personality test, it's not Myers-Briggs. This is a practice. So let's get into it. There's a moment in life when we sense an opening, where the life we've built begins inviting us into something more. Not because anything's wrong, but because we're ready for a deeper, truer expression of who we really are. This is the Lit Up Life podcast, conversations for those who are no longer interested in pushing, proving, or performing, and are ready to lead from truth, alignment, and inner authority. I'm Debbie Heiser, and here we talk about the inner shifts that change everything, how belief, identity, and energetic leadership shape the way you live, work, and choose. This isn't about becoming someone new, it's about coming home to who you already are. Welcome back to the Lit Up Life, the podcast where honestly I get to talk about purpose ignited, how to amplify your profit, and how to embody things powerfully. I'm Debbie Heiser, the founder of the Lit Up Life, and I have spent the last 25 plus years helping women entrepreneurs and CEOs. And actually, in that 25 years, spent a lot of time in corporate with corporate women. And in the last 14 years-ish, have really honed in and started working with CEOs to build the business the way that they want to that requires them to not abandon themselves in order to succeed. I'm in the identity business. So today's episode, I decided to go a little differently. I am going to share with you, and I've done this in the past, but I've split them up. I'm going to share with you these 12 guiding principles that I try to use, and I learned them through two fantastic mentors that I have here in Sandpoint, Jeannie and Kathy. They're twin sisters, and they do some incredible work here. So if you've ever wondered how, I've stayed pretty steady. I run a coaching practice. I have this podcast. I run retreats. I'm traveling a lot. I'm leading my lit up life. I teach a couple of classes at a university. I spend time with my friends and my family, and I have a dog who takes up a lot of energy and time, right? So I want to share these 12 principles because they're not soft. They're the backbone to what I do. Am I perfect at them? Absolutely not. But I'm going to tell you, grab your coffee or your tea, and let's start with, to me, the principle that holds all of the other principles up. And this one is kind of the epitome and sets up the rest of them, really. So this sentence is so important, and there's just a few words in it that make all the difference. So the number one guiding principle is I will be 100% responsible for myself and to others 100% of the time. Now, I want you to hear that again. I will be 100% responsible for myself and to others 100% of the time. And keep in mind, it does not say I am responsible for others. It says I am responsible to others. That distinction has changed my life. I'm not responsible for how other people feel. I'm not responsible for how my clients feel about their invoices, let's say. I'm not responsible for whether a retreat attendee has a breakthrough on my timeline instead of hers. That's not my thing. But I am the one that shows up 100% responsible, prepared, showing up honestly, as honest as I can be, and you'll hear more about that here in a minute. And I'm showing up clean in how I communicate to people. And in business terms, for me, this is the difference between an entrepreneur who blames the algorithm, blames the economy, blames the client who did not convert, and an entrepreneur who asks a much more powerful question. What is my 100% here? You see, that question alone will change. It changes team cultures, it changes close rates, it changes your own nervous system. Now, let's build the rest on the top of that foundation. So, the next one is I will have fun. And this one tends to get skipped a lot by owners because business owners, because we tend to be serious, we're intense, right? And fun sounds unserious. Fun sounds like it's a nice to have you kind of thing after the real work is done, right? The messages that finish your homework before you go out and play, finish your chores before you go out and play. Well, frankly, my work needs to be play, it needs to be fun. And so I want to challenge that completely. And I will tell you, I've done a lot of work in human design. And it taught me something really important about myself. And if you want to hear more about human design, just let me know in the comments of this episode, and I'm happy to do some more. But I'm a generator with sacral authority. And so my body literally does not have sustainable energy for work that does not light me up. And none of us really do, honestly. That's just where the data is the clearest. So when I stopped treating fun as a reward for hard work and I started treating it as fuel from the good work that I do, everything shifted. My content got better. My coaching has gotten sharper. My retreats got more magnetic because people can feel when you're having a good time doing your job. And for me, it's not a job. Now, another thing too is I challenge people a lot to have marshmallow fights, to go buy bags of marshmallows, one for each person in your family. Make sure that your animals are not around. And you have your bag open and you tell people when to come into the room and you just start throwing marshmallows and they catch on really quickly. And I laugh every time I do it so hard I almost cry. And a lot of times I do end up crying because I'm laughing so hard. Now, how does this apply to business? So, like, look at your calendar this week. If nothing sounds fun and it doesn't sound like, and don't get me wrong, there's things in business that we do that don't feel fun, but I try to create fun out of it. So, for instance, I don't love sitting down to do my mileage. So, I might put on a show that I enjoy watching. I might listen to some good music. I might reward myself with something afterwards. So, look at those types of things and try. I think fun is a choice. I was at our music festival. By the time you listen to this, it would have been a couple of weeks. And I volunteered there. And I'm like, you know what? We could sit here and be hot. And like people are crabby sometimes when they're renting chairs because they're like, I can't believe I have to pay $7 to rent a chair. And I'm like, look, it's going to a charity. It's a good cause. But along with that, it's like we choose whether or not we want to have fun. So make sure you have fun. Now, this next principle is one that I know I've struggled with because I tend to be in my mind, and it's I will not ask why. Why is only important for learning. Now, this one trips people up until they really sit with it. And really, it's also looking at and saying, how many times do I say why? How many times have I heard people say, why didn't that launch go very well? Why did that client leave? Why does this keep happening? Why questions, they feel productive, but they're usually a trap door into a story, into that unconscious brain that has had stories that created our identity. And it can go into even the victim game, right? Where we start to blame, we become the victim, we start to spin out, and that lowers our vibration. So here's the distinction. Why is a legitimate tool when you're extracting a lesson? Why did this pattern show up? So I can build a system that prevents it next time. That's learning. Why is this happening to me? Asked from the floor of a bad day is the victim game. And it's wearing a business suit. So the tell is simple, right? So learning why moves you towards some action, but sometimes we don't even need to understand the why. We just need to say, I did that. I'm in a pattern. That's the why, right? So because what happens is we say in suffering, and if you're in suffering, you're gaining something. I know we don't like to hear that, but if you're suffering from something and you haven't moved out of that or taken inspired action, inspired is a key word there, and you're circling in that same drain, you're gaining something from that, whether it's attention, whether it's, people are concerned and you feel loved that way. It's a whole lot of things, right? But in my practice, when a client brings me a why question, I ask them one thing back, like really looking at what's the truth here, because anytime we have chaos or confusion, there's an untruth. So that question, to say, what is it that you want to be true instead, and what might be false about what's in your mind right now, skips that spiral and allows you to go straight into the next inspired action. Now, this next principle, guiding principle number 4, is I will stay current with my feelings, mad, sad, glad, and afraid. Four feelings, not 40. It's taken me a little while to get into Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart because there's so many nuances to feelings. And that was something I stood by and hid from for many, many years. So there's 4 feelings here. There's not 40. It's mad, sad, glad, and afraid. And I teach this because most entrepreneurs, most people that I come across were trained to be professional, which too often got translated into being numb, right? Just going with what's okay. I don't want to lead an okay life. I want to lead a lit up, friggin' absolutely awesome life. So staying current means I don't let something that irritated me on Tuesday become a Thursday resentment, because then that becomes a November business implosion, right? So we have to keep in mind there is a core nervous system at work here. And so it is core work on ourselves that we need to look at. And when we have unprocessed mad, it can show up as passive aggressive. It can show up in communication with people that way. And it's really interesting to me because when I talk to people about something that they're mad about, they'll say, I'm not mad, but the whole time their leg is shaking back and forth, they're clenching their fists. The body tells us so much more. Now, unprocessed sad shows up maybe in a way that you sabotage because you have some grief going on, right? And you haven't named it. And so you're afraid to move forward from the grieving. Unprocessed afraid, a lot of times with my clients, shows up at an offer that they price too low. And they have a hard time getting their arms around it. So I don't push people to go past the point where they go into a spiral, right? I want them to feel a growth edge, but then once they do that, the best thing I hear from people, and I just had a client not long ago in my mastermind say this, they're like, whoa, I did a lot of work and I didn't charge enough. And so that acceptance of their own value in their knowledge that they have and what they're providing for clients. Now, staying current is a daily practice. It's not a therapy session. I check in with myself in the morning before I start my day, right? And I say, okay, where am I feeling things in my body? I do a body scan. I actually do a frequency scan as well with my AO scanner. I have my red light therapy bracelet on, and I walk through that and I take a little bit of time, sometimes about 90 seconds, other times it's a few minutes, to really scan and say, oh, I've got some pain in my shoulder, like what might be sitting there, and things come to my mind that I need to dissolve or let go of or talk to someone about. So pay attention to that. Trust yourself. Now, this next principle is I will be direct and confront in a loving and gentle manner. So when we're in this place where we're relevant and on time with our own emotions, then we can be direct in a loving and gentle manner because we're not being hooked. So direct and gentle, they're not opposites. As a matter of fact, servant leadership that I teach a lot of is all about, like, part of that service is being able to be direct and gentle at the same time. So when I coach people, so let's look at this. I've built really my entire coaching practice on a lot of this because I think that most women I coach were raised to believe that they had to choose. It had to be an either or. And in this case, thinking about kind of how we were raised to confront, you either have to be nice and stay quiet, and to be honest seems really harsh, right? To me, that's a false message that we've gotten that's costing women in their business. Confrontation a lot of times has a negative rap, but when it's done right, it is an act of respect. It's an act of love, because when I confront someone in a gentle and loving manner, it means I care enough to say something to you. That's why whenever anyone's around me, if they have broccoli in their teeth, I'm the first to tell them, because I don't want to be walking around with something in my teeth and go the whole day and nobody tell me. So confrontation, again, I want to say that again, when it's done right, is an act of love and an act of respect. So when I tell a client the truth about a pattern I see, or a lot of times I try to ask questions to help them identify the pattern, or I talk to a team member about a mistake or a deadline that was missed, I do look at what is my impact there, what is something I could have done, because did I show up 100% for myself and to that other person? Like, did I give them some of that information? So, the impact of that is that I'm saying to someone then, when I confront them that way, that I believe that they can handle the truth, and I believe that our relationship can hold it. So loving and gentle does not mean softened into meaninglessness. It means delivered without contempt, without being hooked myself. So I really look at and try to name the behavior specifically and name the impact. And then I figure out what I need going forward, right? So this also puts you in a little bit of a state of vulnerability. So I have no armor. I don't have any apology for having that need. So let's go on. When we think about this next principle, it says, I will tell the indisputable truth. If I cannot do that, I will be as honest as I can be. This one is really subtle, and all of these are kind of my favorite, but this one, the indisputable truth means the facts, right? The invoice is 30 days late. The meeting started 12 minutes behind schedule. There's no interpretation that's really attached to it. But sometimes we don't have access to that truth because what we're carrying is a feeling or a hunch or a fear, or it's foresight that we have a deep knowing. And then in this case, the agreement says, I'm going to be honest, right? I'm going to be honest and say, I don't know what's causing this, versus this is wrong, right? Like I'm putting the onus on myself and being vulnerable and saying, you know what, I'm a little afraid that this isn't working. So let's talk about how it can work, or let's look at maybe it just doesn't work and we need to let it go, right? So I'm not dressing up a feeling as fact, but I'm really looking at trying to express how I feel in a vulnerable state, be honest as much as I can if I don't have factual information, right? Because it's important to come from our heart too. And it's important, when I talked about the spotlight, to keep the spotlight on yourself. So instead of saying, you never support me, which is a story, you can say, I've been a little afraid because I feel like I haven't always been supported in the past. And so by you missing a deadline or making these mistakes, then I'm interpreting that, and this is my stuff, but I feel like it's important in our relationship to have this conversation, right? So both, like, all of these things that I'm talking about are valid. There's way many ways to, and we could use a whole podcast probably on this one, so I might come back to this one. But really be as honest as you can and tell the truth as much as you can. That's even one of the 4 principles that Miguel talks about in his book. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to go through the last 6. And I want you to notice something before we come back. Every principle so far has been an inside job: having fun, not asking why, having feelings, being direct, having truth. And none of that requires another person to change first. And that's really intentional. So when you think about that intention and about you can control what you think and what you do, that's what this is really about. So with that, we're going to take a quick break, refill your coffee or your tea, and we'll come back and finish the list. I want to pause for a moment, because if you're listening to this, you know we were not meant to do this work alone. Build Her is the community I created for women who are building meaningful lives and businesses and want to grow without burnout, self-abandonment, or shrinking to fit. Inside Build Her, we gather monthly for real conversation, intentional teaching, and grounded connection with women who get it. This isn't about hustle, and it's not about fixing yourself. It's about being supported as you lead with clarity, confidence, and intention. So if you feel the pull towards a steady, honest, and expansive community, you're welcome here. Find the link in the show notes or join us at thelituplife.com/buildher. Okay, we're back. Let's dig into the seventh guiding principle. I will solely do my work and no one else's. Now, this is the principle that saves coaches, frankly, from burning out inside their own client relationships. So, my work is my content, my offers, my nervous system, my follow through, my honesty. My client's work is his or her decision, his or her action, his or her growth. The moment I start doing the work for them, when I start worrying more about the outcome than they do, I fall into a rescuer mode, right? When I try to rescue from a consequence, which really tells them that I don't trust that they have the answer, then what I've done is I've crossed the boundary line of being of service to someone into codependency. And codependency dressed up as generosity, it's still in the victim game. It's still being the victim and the martyr, or excuse me, the victim, the persecutor, or the rescuer. And people come into that with really good intentions, but don't do it, right? I try really hard not to do Meredith's work. I try really hard, my marketing person, right? So I try really hard not to delve into that. They're supporting me, I'm supporting them. And the support that we give each other is not to do the other person's work. So trust the container. And really, it's more about helping to clear obstacles, asking the questions of what might be the obstacle that someone is facing versus actually trying to do the obstacle yourself. So keep that in mind. A lot of leaders run into this one a lot. Principle 8 is I choose the win-win mentality. I'm not going to support or play the victim game. So win-lose thinking shows up in business as the belief that someone has to lose for you to win. So if you're undercutting someone out of scarcity, if you're positioning instead of with value. So negotiating a contract where you quietly resent the terms you agreed to, which means you're not holding true to your feelings in the earlier one. Win-win is not naive. It's a discipline. It says, I will not close a sale that only serves me, and I will not accept a client relationship that only serves them, right? There are many people that I talk to that I say, you're not ready for me, or I'm not gonna, like, I don't want to put you in this thing that you want to go into. I had someone ask me to go into my mastermind and I said, no, it's not something that you're ready for. And I don't want them wasting money. I want them to be in the mastermind. It's not that, but, and have relationship, but it's more about they're not at that particular level. They're not at that moment that it would serve them. So it's really about being honest and dealing with that. So it's all the other rules, right? But when we think about this one, it's really about thinking about what is a win for them, what is a win for me as well. The next one is I will choose forgiveness, and what I won't let go of today, I will manage in a loving and gentle manner. Now, I love this one because it doesn't demand instant spiritual bypass or for forgiveness. It gives you permission not to be in the forgiveness yet, but you need to manage what you're carrying with care instead of letting it leak sideways into people who didn't cause it, or leak sideways into the person that maybe did, right? So in practice, this means, let's say you had a client or an employee that a relationship ended badly and you're still processing it, right? You're not bad-mouthing them. You're not spreading gossip about them. You are not like doing those things that cause harm, right? You manage it. So then you're not sending text messages. Like, nothing, I will tell you, drives me crazier than someone that says, yes, I want to do your program, and they either ghost you or they text you that they've changed their mind, right? I feel like I'm building relationships with people, and that deserves a phone call. So think about doing that. And when you think about forgiveness sometimes comes in steps. And again, all of these, I could probably do one podcast episode on each one. So if something resonates with you, please make a comment and I'll go further into some of these, right? Now, other ways I've done some forgiveness, whether it be in personal relationships, is if I didn't like a contract that I had with someone energetically, I wrote them a letter and then I burned it up or tore it up and rewrote the contract with them. Now, principle 10, I will use I statements, be specific, and use the listening model at all times. Now, this is kind of a mechanical backbone. So when you think about that, I statements keeps me in my own experience instead of you need to do this, which then automatically goes into the persecutor and the victim game. So if I'm trying to explain to someone something, I felt unheard in this meeting, and I did this with a very good friend of mine one time. I was like, when you're using your phone or scrolling through Facebook and I'm talking about something that's really important to me, I feel really unheard, because it feels like then you'll say, "Oh my gosh, I just saw this funny thing," which then feels like you haven't heard what I've said, right? So it's important to talk through those things. And then the listening model is that you reflect back. So what I heard you say was, and sometimes you repeat the exact words that they said because they don't realize that that's what they said. And then they're like, no, that's not what I meant, right? So just kind of keep that in mind. Now, principle 11 is I will maintain the confidentiality rule at all times. Confidentiality is trust in its most concrete form, right? So not only in my coaching practices, in my women's group that I lead, and the retreats that I lead, I ask people to keep things confidential. And partially because, frankly, it's if somebody tells me something, it's not my story to tell. So sometimes you're just venting to someone, but think to yourself the next time you go to try to explain to someone something that happened to someone. It happened to me today. I had somebody that I knew that lost a son and had just texted me, and I mentioned it to this person because I felt this person could bring some support to that person. And it's a fine line between then kind of jumping into the victim game here. But ultimately, I haven't shared this with other people because it's not my story to tell. When this person's ready to share that story, they will share that story. So this goes without question for me with clients particularly. Now, the last one is I will remove any blocks that keep me from loving myself and others. And this is the principle that ties the whole metaphysical side of my work to the operational side. When you think about removing any blocks that keep you from loving yourself and others, really that's what we're here for, right? Is love. And if anything is standing between me and loving myself fully, I need to look at that, because then that's a hell no. That's not a hell yes. If anything is in the way of me loving the people that I work with, the people that are in my life, that my family, my friends, a love interest, whatever that may be, like I want to step into that fully. And so it's my responsibility to dissolve those things. So here's what I want you to walk away with. These 12 agreements aren't a personality overhaul. Remember, they're a daily practice that you return to imperfectly over and over. I don't live these flawlessly. I mean, I have days where I ask myself 3 times before I catch myself on something. I have moments where I'm not ready to share a feeling and it feels scary. And so I might hold off a day or two more than what I want to. And sometimes maybe I'm not the most gentle and I come across as condescending, and I don't mean to. So it's not a report card, it's really a compass. So if you want to feel the difference between these principles, just really absorb them and, look at the fact that each one of these kind of builds on each other and they interact with each other, but just start practicing them, right? It is a practice. So these 12 guiding principles, with the very first one, again, I will be 100% responsible for myself and to others 100% of the time. So pick just one, practice it on purpose and notice what shifts. And I would put out there, try the have fun one if you haven't had fun in a while. Let it teach you before you move to the next one. And so I just want to say thank you for spending this time with me. And if this episode moved something in you, send it to someone else in your life who's ready to stop, playing the victim game, or they want to start building a business and a life that they actually want, or maybe they don't even know what type of life they want because they've been wearing all of these hats for everyone else. So I'll see you in the next episode. And until then, stay lit up. Ciao. Thank you for being here and for choosing to spend your time in this conversation. If this work resonates with you, subscribe to the podcast and stay with us as we continue to explore what it means to lead, grow, and live with intention. Let's build your version of the lit up life. I'll see you in the next episode.